Hey guys, Aaron here for Movie Battleground, and today we bring you an exciting, culminating event. This is the second Movie Battleground title fight. Today we are bringing together three players, one who has an amazing record and worked his way through a five-way match to make it here, one who won the tournament to make it here, and the other who is our returning champ. Let's just get straight into it. Up first, entering with a record of 5-2 with a knockout, Isaac Horvat. Isaac, how are you doing, man?
I'm good, man. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to face some redemption here. I was gonna try to do it in the tournament, but I didn't get a chance to because of Greg. He knocked me out. So I wanted to go on kind of a road of revenge and get back at and beat Jeremy, which I did to get into this match. And now I have the chance to redeem myself further and beat Greg now. So it's gonna be a tough match. Evan, not worried about him that much. So I'm just ready to get this show on the road. He's a paper champion who shouldn't have won anyways. So I'm ready to get him out of the way and be the champion. So I'm excited.
Glad to see the shade still exists. He went on an incredible tear. He entered the tournament as one of the lower seeds with a record of 1-1, just simply because pre-tournament we weren't putting out as many matches and just didn't have the opportunity to get him more matches beforehand. But he came in, absolutely went on a tear, beat some of the best competitors that we've had in this competition, including Luca, including Alex, including Isaac to get here. And I can't remember who his first competitor was, but that's where he got his knockout. He enters with a record of 5-1 with a knockout. Greg Weinstein. Greg, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. By the way, my first opponent was Asher. I don't really understand this. I've already beaten Isaac, so I don't know why I have to beat him again. I don't know why I'm not just facing Evan in a one-on-one battle. The only thing I can think of is that the only way Evan wins is if it's a three-person battle, and that way it can split the difference or something. And I don't know why there are 8 questions, because I don't need that many questions to win. So I don't understand why this is going this way, but I'm just here to win. I've already beaten Isaac. I have no issues with Evan. Eventually his phone's going to drop out, and that'll be the end of that. So we'll be good to go.
Glad to definitely see the shade still exists. And the reason the reason for said shade, he enters having not played in a minute's not even beginning to describe it. He enters with a record disputed of 3-1 with a knockout. He is I swear to God, the laughing is going to make it look like this was all fucking rigged, and I swear to God it's not. But he enters as the defending champ, Evan Degraff. Evan, how are you doing, man?
So I started breaking this down. We have a triple threat match, and Greg keeps complaining, oh, it's going to be a split difference. I now have a 1 1/3 shot of winning. If I only played Greg or Isaac, I would have a 1 2. It's now a 1 1/3 chance, so I'm kind of screwed here. But I think I'm going to be okay, because here are my opponents. One is this guy's just over his head, Isaac. He thinks he's all this, but it took him a fatal freaking 5-way to get to it. And if you look at the opponents that he's playing, they're absolutely garbage. So he got in here by winning, but versus some pretty crappy competitors. And then we have Greg, and this guy just likes to talk too much, dude. That's all he does is talk. It's a bunch of nonsense and rambling. He barely hits his points, but he's like one of those debaters who he just keeps jabbing, and he can never really deliver that knockout blow. So I'm okay. It's just interesting to see this dynamic.
So this is a championship match. The way that it works, these guys are going to have to play 8 questions. If we hit a point at which one player is mathematically eliminated, we will obviously just move on to the speed round. But 8 questions are in place that these guys have had time to prepare for and argue on. Entering this match, none of the competitors know each other's answers until they are said in the moment, because Isaac is good at getting his way. So we're going to have 8 rounds of competitive play. Now, here's something that we're introducing for the triple threat title match, because it is an extended format, longer than any other match we've played, with the exception of the previous title match, in which there were 8 questions asked with the caveat of one person playing 5. My mistake, I'll admit to that one. So the way that we're going to do things here today is each competitor, when submitting their answers, was given the opportunity to submit one question as a skip. So technically speaking, each competitor will play 7 questions for a max total of 7 points out of the main game, and then go into the speed round for a max total of 5 points. Once we hit a point where somebody is mathematically eliminated, we move on to the next part of the game. Now, the one thing that I said was the competitors could not skip the same questions. So that means all 8 questions will be asked in some form. It just means 5 will be triple threat questions, and 3 of them will be a one-on-one battle. The competitors also, like normal, will have their 1-minute extension. However, the triple threat fights will be extended by a minute automatically. So 6 minutes for those, 5 minutes for the 2-person matches, and the speed round will work as normal. I said the rules in the most ass-backwards way, but you guys have all been here before, so do you have any questions?
So is that called the Evan rule now?
Is what called the Evan rule?
The skip rule?
No, the Evan rule is play the full fucking game. And that's actually called the Aaron rule, because I'm the one that made that.
All right, moving forward.
Okay. I'm never going to stop taking shit for this.
Get the speed round.
All right. Said, are we ready for this endurance test?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Let's go.
All right. And with this, we argue for the movie Battleground champ and say fuck you to the Lord of the Rings runtime. And with that, we enter the first question. One of officially now the biggest movies of all time ever. That's what all time means. Avengers Infinity War is in theaters. It is breaking all sorts of box office records. It's already in the top 5 highest grossing films of all time. And it did something that we have never seen out of a movie like this. It took multiple different branched franchises within a separate universe, all of which have their own individual film leads and side characters, and put them together in such a way as every character felt balanced on the screen. No character felt overused necessarily. No character felt, well, some characters probably felt underused, but that's what happens when you take that many characters and put them on a screen. And so we decided to ask the question of, simple, who was the best character in Avengers Infinity War? Now, prior to going into this match, normally the way that we work the matches is the person who is higher ranked gets to pick what 2 questions they want to go on first, but we did it kind of like Russian roulette style with this. We started with Evan, went to Greg, and then went to Isaac, and they each drafted a question they wanted to go first on. Evan and Greg will start on 3 questions. Isaac will start on 2. And so with that, we are going to start with Isaac on the first question. Who was the best character in Avengers Infinity War? And I just want to remind competitors before we get into it, obviously the main round will be 6 minutes with your opening statements. Please try and keep them as short and concise and to the point as possible, just for the sake of our viewers' mental stability and the runtime of the video. If things start to feel too rambly and drawn on, I will cut you off and we will move on. Just for the sake of we have to keep things on track. And also, yes, we are activating spoilers for Avengers Infinity War. So if you are not one of the, whatever it's made right now, like $1.6 billion worth of money, if you're not in that and you have not seen this movie, skip the round or be spoiled, basically, because it's been out in theaters long enough. You probably should. You've seen it by now. Let's be honest with ourselves. All right. With that being said, Isaac, go ahead with your opening arguments.
All right. Also, if you haven't seen it, just get your priorities straight and get your life together. Go see this.
Thank you.
My character for the best character in Infinity War is the character that introduced us to the Marvel Cinematic Universe as a whole back in 2008, Tony Stark. Tony Stark brought us into this world, and he's the best part of the kind of what feels like the end of it. His character is, in my opinion, the most emotional character. To see him go on this suicide mission that he wanted to go on by himself, have people come along kind of uninvited. He has to balance that. He has to say goodbye to Earth as a whole, Pepper Potts, and he really goes on to try to save. It's a last-ditch effort, and it pays off a character arc that was set up all the way back in the first Avengers when he fell back through space, and he had that near-death experience, and that character arc continued through Iron Man 3 and Avengers Age of Ultron. It's been a journey of Tony Stark seeing the end coming and trying to do everything he can do to stop it. And this is his last ditch effort, and he fails. And to see him fail in the last moments of this movie is the most emotional part of the movie, and it's just really cool to see a character that we've gotten to know over 18 movies now, have him experience something that we've never seen before, not in this way. So Tony Stark, best character of Infinity War.
All right, good answer. And with that, we're going to move next to Evan. Who was the best character in Avengers Infinity War?
By far, it's not even a conversation. It's Doctor Strange. When there are a few big talking pieces coming out in Infinity War, but there was one called The Surprise of Doctor Strange. No one knew how big he was going to show up in the capacity that he did, and he showed up raw, big, and a lot of it has to do with the time stone and how much at first that time stone meant to him. But throughout the whole journey and through the whole story, we saw the character arc of him no longer caring about the time stone, but as he said, that we're in it for the end game now, and he cared about other people's lives instead of his. And there's a line in the beginning of the movie where he was like, look, if it comes down to your lives or the Infinity Stone or the time stone, I'm protecting the time stone. It wasn't like that at the end of the movie. He gave up the time stone. So there's that. He has one of the best set pieces in the whole movie, where literally you see a crap ton of Doctor Stranges all around, and it's like one of those Pokemon, Alakazam, I think his name is, where you see a crap ton of them all around him. It was just a really cool set piece to see because we haven't seen something like that in Marvel before. I would say he's probably the most complex character in this movie due to his powers that he had and also the battles that he had to face. And he was one of the funniest characters too, with his dry sense of humor, and how he bounced off of the characters such as Star-Lord, Iron Man, Spider-Man, and how he was able to bounce off and create some type of space. And even with Thanos, he was able to bounce off humor with them. It was just a very great overall, solid, well-made character, which was surprising. It was a great sight to see. It was very refreshing, to be honest.
All right. And finally, we'll go ahead and move into Greater in Avengers Infinity War.
Okay, so I thought this match was gonna be a lot harder because I thought they would pick very different characters, and they actually picked those two characters because really the only answer is, and I'm laughing at what Evan said about Doctor Strange being the only one, because really the only character that matters is Thanos. Thanos is literally the only character that matters. He is the protagonist of the movie. He drives the entire movie forward. Without him, there is no movie. So you want to talk about a literal movie that requires someone? It's Thanos. And Thanos is not only the driving force of the movie, he's actually the emotional core of the movie. It is everything that Thanos has been building to and everything that he has been working for his entire life when he had those issues back on his home planet of Titan. It's him trying to get back and solve what issue that he sees as prevalent is that the universe cannot sustain what the universe has. And it's by the time they end the movie that you actually start to buy into what he's saying. You still think he's an insane, maniacal guy, but what he's saying is actually a very truthful statement, is that, yeah, it's just like here on Earth. We are dangerously close to overpopulation, and there has to be a way to somehow fix it eventually. Thanos is the only emotional change in the movie. He's the only one that actually has a character arc in the entire movie, and he had the most expectation, the most build up possible, and he surpassed that with flying colors. Thanos is by far the best character in Infinity War, and it's not even close.
All right. Good opening statements from everybody, and with that, we're going to go ahead and get into the opening forum. 6 minutes on the clock when one of you starts speaking.
Dude, Isaac, I have to jump at you first. You said this has been built up for 18 movies, and that's not true. Tony Stark hasn't been in 18 movies. First things first. And second, you kept talking about his older movies rather than how he was good in Infinity War itself. Therefore, I'm confused on how he's a good character in Infinity War. And also to bounce off of Thanos. He look, at times he was cool. He could throw big punches and stuff like that. He's also super flat at times, just like, okay, here we go, bring me here. And that was about it. Yeah. People say he loved Gamora. Did he really, though? No, I don't think so. Like, there's just times in the movie where he felt...
Soul Stone loved Gamora because the Soul Stone took Gamora as a life. It would not have taken Gamora as a life.
Anything.
Did not Soul Stone already agreed. The Soul Stone agreed. And you talk about Doctor Strange. Everyone bounces on Doctor Strange. Spider-Man is the one who says the line about, "Oh, we're using our made-up names." Doctor Strange is a blank slate. Benedict Cumberbatch does nothing.
Also, the crux of your opening argument about Doctor Strange was that he grew as a character and he started caring about people that weren't the Time Stone. That's not true. At the end of the movie, when he gives Thanos the Time Stone, you're forgetting he saw the future there. This is still part of Doctor Strange's plan. It was still about the Time Stone. It's still about beating Thanos. But it's not about caring for people. He knows the future.
When he looked at Tony, he cared. He very much clear. He was like, and you can see it on his face. He was like, "We're in the endgame."
His cape does more than him for the movie. And Iron Man.
Dude, are you kidding me? Did you miss a set piece where we saw like a million freaking Doctor Stranges there? Don't even say his cape does more than he does.
His cape does more than he does.
So much fun to watch.
Doctor Strange's is basically a David Copperfield joke that the guy and the henchman of Dr. Thanos agrees that he should be doing for baby kids' powers, which I think is why you agree with it, because you're so young.
No, dude, time out. You got to be kidding me here, because there's a thing. They don't even have a chance against. They don't even have a chance against Thanos if it's not Doctor Strange, because they're jumping through the portals with Doctor Strange.
He decided to stick on the ship where it was only Iron Man, Doctor Strange, and Spider-Man. That was his only 3 people that he thought he was going to fight Thanos with, because he didn't know about the Guardians. So it's only going to be those 3 against Thanos on a alien world they know nothing about. It was a horrible plan, and he didn't learn anything. It's still him thinking he knows better and criticizing Doctor Strange, criticizing Spider-Man. When Spider-Man comes up with the plan, and Doctor Strange is the one with the Time Stone. And speaking about Doctor Strange, he doesn't even use the Time Stone correctly. He has his Time Stone and he sucks. That's my problem with him and Vision. They both have an Infinity Stone and they suck with it. They get their ass kicked.
He's trying to hide it from Thanos. Clearly, he said this before, and Thanos knew it. He said, "I'm trying to hide." He was hiding it from him so he couldn't have it. There's no type of struggle with this villain, and that was the big problem. He's like, "All right, Thanos is gonna win this one. Thanos is gonna win this one. Thanos is gonna win this one." There's no type of, "Oh my God, they actually might get it from Thanos." You always knew Thanos was gonna have it. That was my problem.
Yeah, you predicted that the heroes would win the movie. You were out of your mind. You did not predict that.
What?
Read the comic books, you predicted it. As for Doctor Strange, speaking of the comic books, here's the thing. Thanos as a villain is a weak villain. You talked about his motivations, and they don't make any sense. The motivations of the comics, they made sense. The motivations here, he's an idiot. So the environment's running out, and you're going to gather the most powerful things in the world that you can change reality. And instead of creating a bigger world, creating more resources, his answer is to kill half the planet. The motivations are completely stupid. You think about them for half a second, they fall apart.
From maniacal mind. Yes, a normal person would think to do different resources, but he is not a normal person. He is a maniacal, insane, evil guy.
But they don't portray him that way. They portray him as someone with balance. They portray him as someone with balance, and clearly, they portray him as someone who's not as villainous as he is.
He doesn't just kill the poor people. He doesn't just kill the rich people. He doesn't just kill the evil people. He doesn't just kill the good people. He makes a random half every time he goes to a planet, and that's what he does with a snap. He just kills a random amount.
They make a bunch of weapons, because then he kills everybody except one. But that makes sense too, I guess.
He killed everyone because he didn't want any more weapons. He should have actually killed Peter Dinklage.
He's inconsistent about his motivation.
He's not inconsistent. His whole thing is trying to not deal with what he did on Titan and create a universe where everyone has the ability to live peacefully. That's what he said with Gamora's homeworld. Years later, Gamora's homeworld is now living peacefully, and no one has known any struggle or strife. That is why Thanos keeps going, because he's believed that what he is doing is correct based on what he has done previously.
But they don't portray him. Like, his portrayal is weird because he has these motivations, but he's also villainous at the same time. It makes no sense. He wants world peace, but he does it at the same time, but they don't portray it that way. They just portray someone who's all wants death and nothing else. And the way how you're describing Thanos, it doesn't describe it that way. It's not portrayed that way.
It's the evil idea. No one's saying it's the good idea. It's the evil idea, but it's still an idea that somewhat makes sense if you're a maniacal asshole. But it's still an evil. There are plenty of ways you can do a good thing. But the fact is, your 2 guys are nothing to the movie. They don't have a character arc. Nothing changes about them. No, they don't. Iron Man has no character arc.
Yes, he does. What's my Iron Man's character arc is, at the beginning of the movie, he selfishly is, I'm the one that's going to take this sacrifice. I'm the one that's going to go on this journey. I'm going to take on Thanos alone. I'm doing this. I choose this sacrifice. It's the same lesson that Captain America and Vision learned on Earth. It's a parallel of this idea that you don't get to be the one to choose who makes sacrifice.
So many times. We've seen this character arc from Tony so many times.
No, we haven't.
The same thing.
All the time. all the time.
Where?
The first Avengers, when he went to go take care of the nuke.
Iron Man
that's not
3.
an arc. You didn't learn to have other people make that sacrifice. That's not the same thing at all.
He went to go make that sacrifice himself. He didn't ask for help. He said, I'm going to go take care of this myself.
That's
And he's
still
not
not
going
learning. He didn't learn anything there.
Going to get Doctor Strange, and his plan was to come back. He didn't think to go to Titan until they actually he got the time stone back. He had no idea.
That is time.
That is what the plan was.
Time.
That is time.
Yeah, I heard him.
All right. We're gonna go ahead and go into closing arguments. Isaac, you're up first.
Okay. First, I'll take on Thanos. Thanos, there's two types of villains in movies, okay? There's ones you hate to love, and there's ones you love to hate. Thanos is neither, and you've been dancing around it a little bit, and you're accurate in that they try to portray him as this maniacal, crazy madman titan that wants to wipe out half the universe on one hand, and on the other hand, they try to give him this emotional complexity and backstory to make you understand him with Gamora and with his home planet, and they don't work. They don't jive. In the comics, you hate Thanos. He is evil. He's pure maniacal. He tortures people. And in this movie, you have scenes where he's torturing his one daughter to get information out of the other daughter and then kills that daughter. And like they try to portray this pure evil and then make you root for him, and it doesn't work. It makes me feel weird watching Thanos. It doesn't work. You said he's the most emotional crux of the movie. No, I couldn't care less about Thanos. He's not emotional. I care about the people he's affecting. The people he's affecting, Iron Man. That's who he's affecting. As for Doctor Strange had a great origin movie, and he had a cameo in Thor Ragnarok. I still don't know enough about his character to care about him in this movie. He's basically, once again, a glorified character. He waves his hand and does some cool stuff, but his character is shallow. He's there to be a foil, but not to have an arc, not to have something to do, not to actually be a character. It was still about the time stone. It wasn't about saving people. As far as like, if it was truly a choice between the time stone and Tony, I believe Doctor Strange, with a knowledge of his, if he had seen that was the way to beat Thanos was to keep the time stone, he would have kept the time stone. I don't think that he would have given him the time stone if he knew that wasn't the one way to beat him. Tony Stark does have an arc, and it's not one we've seen before. You talked about the first Avengers. It's not the same arc at all. The beginning of this movie, he is this guy who sees, he remembers the visions that he's had and the destruction that happens on Earth, and he doesn't want that to happen. So he's willing to do the ultimate sacrifice to do it, but he doesn't want anybody else. He talks down to Spider-Man. He doesn't want him there. Talks down to Doctor Strange. He doesn't want to see anybody else get hurt. His greatest fear is to be left alone because he failed. At the end of the movie, that happens. And at the end of the movie, he realizes, I think, that he can't make those choices. He can't make those sacrifices for other people. People make decisions in this world, and people get hurt. And that's what the lessons were on Earth with Vision and Captain America about you. We don't trade lives. This isn't about that. This is about people making their own choices, making their own sacrifices. This is the character that we've seen. You're right, he wasn't in every 18 movies, but you knew exactly what I meant. You said that my opening didn't talk about him in this movie, but it did. You just chose to ignore it. I talked about how this was the most emotional arc of him on this suicide mission who fails. It showed him evolve as someone who cared about the Earth. And just for the record, this is the only character in this movie to really earn Thanos' respect. And that line where he says, "I hope they remember you," that whole monologue he has with him, is so awesome to see the defeat on Tony Stark's face, to realize that he's failed. That's a character moment. That's a character we care about, and it's the best character in this movie. Thanos and Doctor Strange, not so much.
All right, and we'll go ahead and move on to Evan for closing arguments.
Well, to be fair, we've beaten the living crap out of Thanos, and look, Greg's gonna give some type of like Hail Mary comeback. Thanos was this awesome guy, blah blah blah. No, at the end of the day, Thanos was serviceable. He did what he needed to. He snapped his fingers and half the universe is gone. It was almost as it was a plot point, a plot device, only to move the plot forward. A villain should be more than that. A villain should be someone who's complex, who has layers, who's doing something like Killmonger that we saw from Black Panther, but he wasn't. He was just someone who was confusing, not consistent. I want to wipe away half the world, but I still want there to be peace. You can't kill people and there not be peace, as we saw in that last post-credit scene in New York, where he's killed half of everybody, but cars are flying everywhere, and I'm pretty sure that's not what peace means. So when you break it down, Thanos just doesn't make any sense. Now, for Iron Man, we've seen this arc from him before. I know you keep telling me not, but think about this for a second. Spider-Man Homecoming, he keeps telling Spider-Man to stop. No, you can't do this, because Iron Man wants to do it himself. And then the first Avengers, where he's bringing the nuke into New York, that's him doing the ultimate sacrifice. And you keep bringing up this ultimate sacrifice, and you're saying this is his most emotional movie. Dude, Iron Man 3 covered PTSD. That's easily his most emotional and developed character piece, for sure, versus Infinity War. Are you kidding me? Iron Man 3 is a much more character piece and much more emotional. And I just think Iron Man in this movie could have done more as in being a complete team player, and I think that would have been the better arc, rather than him being the self-independent driven person that he is, rather than having to learn and actually participating in a team where it could have actually worked out in the end. And that's something I would have liked to see more out of him, because if he was the team player, arguably they could have won. Who knows? Out of those 14 million chances that Doctor Strange was able to find, which makes this whole thing go around. When Doctor Strange sits there and he's bugging out like this and finding out 14 million different possibilities at the end of the fight in Titan, you start to realize why Doctor Strange is such a quintessential part to the team, because he's able to figure out all these different things that he could do and that could happen. And people like to blame Star-Lord and blah 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 for ruining Thanos, and he knew Thanos was gonna beat them on Titan. He knew no matter what, they were gonna get beat by Thanos just because Thanos is Thanos. So what did he do? He realizes that he has valuable lives that could help save the future, not just the time zone, but valuable lives. So what does he do? He goes, okay, I care about these people. I care about the world. I'm willing to give up this time zone, something that I'm sworn to, for everybody else. And that's such a big deal for him, because he, as we saw in the first Doctor Strange movie, he is a material-based person. He is based on material. And that time zone is a material-based thing. But what does he do? He goes, no, I'm willing to give this up to save the universe, to save something bigger than me. And at the end of the day, he ends up keeping the original Avengers alive due to that choice. And his comedy works so well because of his dry sense of humor with Spider-Man, Star-Lord, and Iron Man. It really bounces off, and it works super well. It's that balancing movie that we need. We needed that foil to Iron Man, and it works super well. Doctor Strange in this movie just is the complete character. Thanos is very one-sided. Iron Man is very one-sided, but Doctor Strange is able to capture everything that we like out of a Marvel character, out of any character, period, and that's what he does so well.
All right. They literally had no knocks.
All right,
against
we'll
Thanos.
go ahead and move to Greg for closings.
All right, they literally had no knocks against Thanos. Their whole "they took me down" was insane. Iron Man had the exact same arc in Age of Ultron and Civil War, where he tried to do everything himself by bringing up Ultron, and then it backfired on him, and then he had to work with everyone. He had to do the same thing in Civil War, where because of that, it screwed him up and everything. So that's ruined his. So that Iron Man had the exact same arc. He doesn't have an arc. We saw the exact same phone call with Pepper Potts in the first Avengers. It didn't have any actual resonance and standing at all. Iron Man is going to be the same character in every movie he's always going to be in, a fast-talking, wisecracker who thinks he's always right, and who doesn't actually have any kind of character arc because he's already been through it 12, 13, 15, 100 times over before. Doctor Strange is laughable. He's literally a blank slate. He's affected by everyone else. Spider-Man has more quips, and Doctor Strange just reacts. Star-Lord has the quips, and Doctor Strange reacts. Doctor Strange is helped out by his cape twice, by bringing him away from the henchman guy, and by being saved with the cape, Spider-Man and Iron Man, to actually save Doctor Strange when he's on the ship. Just because he has what we think is the reason behind giving up the stone does not mean he's actually a good character. It just means that there might be a reason behind it, which we won't know until the fourth movie. That has nothing to do with this one, which is because Thanos has the better character arc by a countrywide mile, and it's not even close. He is, while he may be insane and deranged, when sane and deranged people think of ideas, they don't think of ideas the same way normal people do. Normal people, yes, they would think to just create more space for everyone. They would think to create more resources. But that's not what an insane maniacal person does. An insane maniacal person sees something and then thinks of that insane maniacal way to do it. But because he is so steadfast in his direction, he has no wavering. He continues on with his goal and completes it, even with it having sacrificed the one person he loves, which is Gamora. That is proven by the fact that he terrorizes Nebula right in front of Gamora, but refuses to even lay a hand on Nebula until the time where he has to get the Time Stone. Oh, Soul Stone. That is the only time you even see Thanos have actually any kind of real emotion, except for the whole fake out on Nowhere, which was another great scene that he could use and profit from, and show that yes, this would come back. Show that even though Gamora thinks Thanos is a horrible person, when she killed him, she wasn't joyous. She was sad. She had to get over the fact that what she did to the person, while insane and horrible, did raise her from a kid. And even though you can be raised by the worst person in the world, there's still going to be that connection, and they have shown that was the connection there. And not only is Thanos the emotional core, the actual character with only an arc, he shows off his power by beating the crap out of Hulk and basically forcing Hulk into his little shell for the entire rest of the movie. It is because of Thanos' butt whooping that Hulk does not come out, and we get no help from him. He is a better villain, and you want to bring up Killmonger? Thank you for bringing up Killmonger, because I was going to do that myself. But Killmonger also had the exact same idea of what we can do is the evil way of going about it. He did not. It was nuanced because of that particular reason. Killmonger wanted to help out the 2 billion black people all over the world, but he wanted to do it through uprising violence. That is the same path that Thanos had. Just because it's, again, you said it yourself, it was a great character arc. They used the same character arc again with Thanos, and Thanos again had all the expectation in the world. He's been through 4 or 5 movies where it was just him sitting around doing nothing. He was not that big in the trailers, and everyone thought this was going to be another generic villain who's trying to find a MacGuffin that all the heroes were eventually going to stop. And it did not happen, and you showed that at the end when he goes into the Soul Stone area, he connects with Gamora, and then goes off into his own, and at the end of the movie where he's in his own happy place, and he is content. He has no other plans to do anything else because he has fulfilled his own mission that he thinks will save the universe, and he's content in his land. And you want to talk about the whole after credit scene? The reason why that's still chaotic is because it literally just happened. You're not going to have it be peace a second after it happened. You have to have months and years down the road. Obviously, hopefully we won't see that, but that is the case. Thanos was the only character in the movie that had an actual character arc, had any kind of emotional beats, exemplified by the sacrifice of Gamora, which was the only really depressing, sad scene in the movie. And it was the only character arc that we had. And you were right when you said all the characters get affected by him because he is the lightning rod that everyone else goes around, because he is the only one with a character and a drive, and he oversells that entire movie by being better than what he could have, we thought we were going to be, and he excelled graphically. He is one of the top 3 Marvel villains of all time.
Okay, and with that, during the rounds, I like to try and do a little bit of fact checking. Not much to fact check there, except that Evan, you were correct at the start. The Pokemon you're referring to is Alakazam.
Yes.
All right, just to lighten the mood a little bit. Great first round, guys. Wouldn't expect anything better out of a title match. And looking at the notes, I think the first one I can pull out of the fight is Evan on this one, just because I think every direct point that he made, they were able to hit back against it in some way. He talked about the character development that he went through, showing the emotion. The argument back was, well, he's just doing that because he saw the vision, which is a fair point. Again, there is only so much room in this movie to show each character, so we don't get to see the entire depth of their mindset, so we're going off of what we know. There was also the point of that the fact that he works great off of all characters, and then the point came up that he's kind of a blank slate, which is why he can work great off of both characters. So I think that kind of knocks Evan out there. So it comes down between Greg with Thanos and Isaac with Tony. And again, the one thing that I can give all 3 of you guys credit on is I do think that every kind of positive point that was brought up, something was said to try and fight back against it and really bash back against it. With Greg, kind of the crux of his argument was the fact that Thanos is a villain that has an emotional arc within the film. You can sympathize with the character, and that his plan, while not making sense to us, is something that in a psychopath's mind is something that is logical and something that makes sense, and theoretically, with proof in the film, something that does work. And then some of the hitbacks against that were the fact that sometimes the character fell a little flat. The fact that it was brought up that the love portion of his character, specifically for Gamora, feels more like it was used, felt more used as a plot point than it did an actual legitimate emotion. And the fact there was also brought up some illogicacies in his plan, although I do think Greg hit back against those pretty well. But there was also the fact that Thanos comes into this and you always feel like Thanos is going to win. So again, there were some good fight backs there. When it comes to Tony, Isaac's main point was the fact that this is, he brought up right at the start that Tony previously had been the emotional centerpiece of the MCU in a lot of the films, almost anything he's appeared in, and the fact that this completes a character arc that begins as far back as the first Avengers. It brings back the PTSD element that was in Iron Man 3. It brings back this idea that he wants to self-sacrifice. It brings back the fact that, and it brings back all these recurring elements that we'd seen throughout his character in the previous films. And then obviously the points that were hit against it were the fact that that these are plot points that we've seen from previous films, and specifically the example that Evan brought in was the fact that, specifically the PTSD emotion was already done in Iron Man 3, and it was done better there than it was in Infinity War. So definitely some hitbacks on both. I'm on this one though, I'm going to give the point to Isaac, because a lot of the argument against him was on the fact that the character arc was something that was used in other movies, which is something that he acknowledged at the start and said that it is continuing that same arc and finalizes it. And there's also the plot element that no one touched on, the fact that Tony's worst fear is being left alone because of his actions and because of his failure. And none of the other films have ever exemplified that, and this one did. And in that way, it is kind of a finite to his character arc, because it shows that it shows that his fears in some way were legitimate, and that point wasn't touched on. So for that, I am going to give the point to Isaac on this round. And so with that, we are going to go ahead and move on in to question number 2. So in honor of the upcoming release, Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, thought we'd get a little more creative for a title fight and ask a bit of a different question. Let's see if this goes well or not. What type of hybrid dinosaur do you want to see in a future Jurassic World movie? So Greg is going to go ahead and use his sit out on this question. So this one will be a 5-minute fight between Evan and Isaac. And for this one, because he drafted it first, we are going to go to Evan first. Evan, go ahead with your opening arguments.
Before I even go on, I want to show you guys a crappy drawing. Something that is a visual representation so you guys can get an idea. I hope you guys can see it. It's this one right here. What we call that is we're going to call that the Stegosaurus Rex. Now, what this maniacal being can do is, it's just like a T-Rex. Scary, got its big jaws, and it sells really well. Every single Jurassic World, every single Jurassic Park movie, the ones that sell well, what do they all have in common? They got a T-Rex in common, right? But what's cool about this one? It's got spikes on its back. You don't want to screw something that has spikes on its back. It's going to hurt you, dude. It's going to make you feel all like bloody, and it's got this whole different award to it. Instead of something that's just got these raw and these small little things, it got spikes on its back. So if it falls backwards, not only is it's not going to slip anymore, it's going to stop in the distraction, it's going to flip right back up. And you're not see it. It's like whenever someone hits the Undertaker is knocked out. And what does he do? He just sits right up and he goes. And it's something scary, and it's something that you don't see. And that's why the Stegosaurus Rex should be implanted in the next Jurassic Park movie, because it is scary and it's something that you don't want to see. And I'll eat so much popcorn watching that movie. Hashtag Stegosaurus Rex 2020.
Right, and oh. Then Isaac?
Whew, holy cow. That's
He just
spectacular.
caught him off guard.
That's spectacular. It's awful, but it's spectacular.
You got something against the Stegosaurus Rex?
I do. I have a lot against the Stegosaurus Rex. Jeez. I don't wow.
You sound like a Jurassic World fan.
I love Jurassic.
It's gonna make this voice that goes.
All right. Let him get his opening out, Evan. You gotta keep the match going.
I think I just won the argument based on that. I don't know.
He's not helping himself. I'll give him that much.
All right, my hybrid is bringing something new to the Jurassic World franchise, Jurassic Park franchise. I am taking an Inostren Sevia and an Allosaurus. I'm combining those two. Now, I'm just going to call it the Inosaurus for the ease of pronunciation. But the Inno thing is a prehistoric creature. It's something different. Being brought to the Jurassic World franchise. We've never seen anything like this in any movie ever. Think of this as a saber-toothed dinosaur bear. That's basically what it is. It's a prehistoric creature. It's a little mammalistic, so it's got some hair or fur on it. So it's definitely different than anything we've seen. It's terrifying. It's fast. It's got the speed of the Allosaurus. It can be quadrupod and bipod, stand on its back legs, stand on its forelegs, and run fast. It's terrifying. Look up the pictures of this creature, and it's a monster from your worst nightmare. I just think it's time to introduce something a little bit different to the Jurassic franchise. It has one of the coolest ideas ever in that, hey, let's bring back some prehistoric creatures, and then they never brought back anything other than dinosaurs. Like, sure, dinosaurs are awesome, but after a lot of movies, wow. I feel like it's time to mix it up a little bit, and there are a lot of prehistoric creatures that can be really cool, and the Inostren Sevia is one of them. It's like I said, you just say the word saber-toothed dinosaur bear, who doesn't want to see that? See Chris Pratt running around trying to get away from that. The thing is terrifying. I want to see that. Stegosaurus Rex, good.
All right, guys, and with that, we have the Stegosaurus Rex taking on the Inosaur. Is that how you say it, Isaac?
Yeah.
All right. This is gonna be interesting.
So you want to put Godzilla, right? You just want Godzilla in Jurassic Park then? It's basically, especially the 1990, it's basically just a giant T-Rex with spikes on its back. Not to mention, just like it's just another dinosaur.
Or a dinosaur of all time, the Inosaur. Like, let's say this out loud
That's
together.
not the official. I just came that up with so that you can pronounce it.
So
it's not
boring.
Oh yeah, boring. No, I don't focus on the one aspect of my argument that has nothing about
you want
what
something
it is.
Fuzzy for merchandising? I want an action figure I can play with. I don't want something fuzzy and I can just touch. It's gonna be weird.
It has fur.
Gross.
It's not fuzzy. It's not
if something has fur, it's fuzzy.
No, it's not.
Yes,
that's not true. Oh my gosh.
And then also, I'm trying to let the kids enjoy this stuff. I actually don't want something that they're going to be absolutely, completely afraid of.
Like the Indominus Rex or the original Tyrannosaurus? What, you just literally said that your creature is so scary. Like, what are you trying to do here?
Scary, but I'm not going to run children away from seeing this movie and it not making $1 billion.
It's not
You're at least going to make $1 billion with my movie. Having the freaking Inosaur like as your lead figure, it's not going to make any money. Why would they do that? It's not profitable. It's
yes,
dumb.
it is. It's introducing something different. You know what's stupid?
Yeah.
Your idea is like everything
like that.
action figures. Let's take scissors, cut the spikes off a Stegosaur, and super glue them to the back of a T-Rex. That's cool. No,
kids are idiots. They like
exactly.
that kind of
They're
stuff.
idiots. Stop pandering to them. Stop
like
pandering to them. Give them
like
something different. Give them something new.
These movies are meant
that
for
they haven't seen.
pandering to the audience. These movies are meant for pandering to the audience. Have you seen Jurassic World? You said it yourself. You like Jurassic World, so you like things that pander to the audience.
I do, but my favorite part of it was the big scary hybrid dinosaur.
Which what had in it? A T-Rex. The hybrid had a T-Rex in it. It was part T-Rex and part Raptor.
Exactly.
And mine has part T-Rex in it.
Yes, so you just want to do the same thing again. That's what my argument against yours.
Because it's gonna make money and it's gonna be fun.
Let's do something different. We've never seen an Allosaur. We've never seen an Inostrancevia.
What? Okay, can you repeat that?
Inostrancevia. I just said it.
It's like Transylvania. It's gonna be too scary. No one's gonna want to go see it.
Oh no!
I want to see something.
Man-eating dinosaurs are too scary. What a tragedy!
No one wants to see a bear on screen.
No, let's talk about the biological stupidity of your dinosaur.
if I wanted to see a bear on screen, I would have went to go see the Revenant.
No,
again.
Is your dinosaur going to eat plants or people? Because the Stegosaurus is an herbivore and the T-Rex is a carnivore. How does that biologically work out? The Stegosaurus is a quadrupod. The T-Rex is a bipod. How is that going to work out? Like what?
This is
are you just going to do what's best to make it scary?
Enjoy the fantasy world, dude. It's a fantasy world. You're getting too deep into this.
No. The best thing about Jurassic Park is that there's always been an element of reality to it. It's not cartoony. It's not stupid. Don't throw out stupid things.
Dude, there are kids riding in gyroscopes in Jurassic World.
Don't put wings on my Velociraptors.
We have gone to the level of Fast and Furious stupid. Especially with you want a bear mixed with the saber-tooth mixed with the dinosaur?
No. I said think of a bear saber-tooth. That's what it looks like. I'm just giving you a visual picture. It's a gigantic...
Well, that visual picture is stupid. It's not fun. No one wants to see that on screen.
It sounds stupid.
It is. I have to think like the mass audiences nowadays. What do they want to have? What do they want to play with? They don't want to play with something that's like fuzzy. It's got like big teeth coming out of it. And they're just like, No, they want something that's spiky on the back. And they're like, oh, that's what they want.
That's what they want.
That's
not what anybody wants, Evan. I can promise you that's literally not what anybody wants is a Stegosaurus Rex.
Are you kidding me? Yes, they do. They wanted that Velociraptor Rex. So why wouldn't they want a Stegosaurus Rex? Why would they not want a T-Rex that has spikes on it? And it's going to be so good in combat too, because instead of it getting knocked down and sliding back into the water, what's going to happen? It's gonna like go down.
What?
It's going to stick there and it's going to come right back up. It's going to be like,
It's going to stick into the ground and then pop right back.
Time. Yes, sir.
That is time. Okay. Keep this short and sweet, guys. Evan, closing arguments.
Look, at the end of the day, no kid wants to play with something fuzzy. No kid, especially when they're trying to go hard at it. No kid wants to play with something that like has big teeth sticking out of it, looking like a walrus, like and then start playing walrus games. Nobody wants that to happen at all. And you think it's too complex, and the name Inosaurus, you can't promote that, and it's just flat. There's nothing to it. You're like, oh, are you trying to make Jurassic World into the next Jurassic Park movie into a horror movie? No, we still need this thing to make money. We have to keep it action adventure, just slightly scary enough where kids will scream but not have nightmares every single night of the rest of their lives. We want something that is for the whole family, and what you're pitching to me is like a rated NC-17 thing that nobody's gonna be able to see, and we don't want that. But what we want is a Stegosaurus Rex. We want spikes on the back of on my freaking T-Rex, because 1, that's scary. 2, it's even more competitive for that T-Rex. And 3, it will eat as many people's life, but those kids will be enjoying it. They'll be eating their popcorn, and when they walk out of it, they're gonna buy a pop vinyl of it. And they'll be like, "Oh my God, Dad!" And the dad's gonna get all nerdy because it's a pop vinyl, and everybody's gonna be happy. But no one's gonna be happy with something that's fuzzy. That's the end of my argument. Ah!
Can I just say, for the sake of intelligence, I think Greg should win this round just because he was smart enough to see what Evan was going to do and sat out. Brilliant stroke of genius. Like, he doesn't have to subject his brain cells to that argument. Kids don't want to play with something fuzzy. The most popular toys of all time are fuzzy. The freaking teddy bear. The teddy bear is fuzzy. Furby. There's a.
Okay, Isaac. For the sake of your sanity, I'm gonna call the argument because I have to appreciate Evan's creativity of the franchise has become a pandering franchise, so let's create a dinosaur that panders to the audience. But Evan took that approach and Isaac took a legitimate scientific approach to this. And I think he described Evan's dinosaur in the best way possible when he said, and I quote, "It's a T-Rex with cut off Stegosaurus bumps on the back." Like, I mean, that's basically it. No, yeah, Isaac wins this one easy. I appreciate the approach. But I think he even took your approach and scientifically was able to combat it and take it down. It was interesting in it, but Isaac does win. All right, guys, and with round 2 out of the way, that was something fucking else. We go into question number 3 with Isaac up 2-0. So it's important that Greg and Evan get back into this and earn some points here in the upcoming rounds. And for this next question, we ask a lot of comic book questions because comic books are a big part of the film world today. And we've asked a lot of questions about the MCU because the MCU is a bigger part of the world today. If you look at the top 5 highest grossing comic book movies, it's Infinity War, Avengers, Age of Ultron, Black Panther, and Iron Man 3. They dominate the space when it comes to comic book movies. But Marvel also has other branches of cinematic film universes. So we decided to hit up one of their other studios and ask, what is the best comic book movie produced by Fox Studios? Now, I worded it this way, so it opened it up to other options besides the Marvel films. But we've got, in my opinion, the 3 best Marvel films from Fox Studios going at it today. So let's see who can do it best. And Greg, you drafted to go first on this one, so go ahead with your opening arguments.
All right. I don't know what the other two movies are by the other 2 people, but it doesn't really matter because I picked the best movie done by Fox Studios, which was by and far the recent release of Logan, the final installment of Hugh Jackman's illustrious 9-picture deal as Logan / Wolverine. It was completely unexpected. It was a huge left turn for Fox Studios. It was not something that anyone thought that they would go, especially after the recent iterations of the Logan movies, including X-Men Origins Wolverine and The Wolverine, which X-Men Origins is just horrible, and The Wolverine is fine for about maybe half the movie, but then completely drops the ball. But Logan is by far the best movie of the Fox Studios, not only mentioned by the critics and everything else, but just the fact that it takes what we've seen in other superhero movies, including DC, including Marvel, including Fox, including Pixar, including whatever thing you want to look at in terms of superheroes, and it takes it completely on its head. Logan is basically at the bottom of the barrel at this movie starts. He is not the Logan Wolverine we think about. He's hurt. He's damaged. His healing factor is not what it is. He's developed the alcoholism, and the only other music that we know that we've recognized is Patrick Stewart as Professor X, and what a great role for him. I don't know how he didn't get nominated for supporting actor, but you couple that with a great supporting part by Daphne Keane as X-20 as Laura, and a great full circle plot for Logan coming to deal with his old younger self and with the demons he has to face, and with the fact that superheroes might not always be there, might not always be the best one we think about, but Logan is the best movie by far, and it is always going to be the best movie by far.
All right, and with that, we're going to move on to Isaac next. Isaac, what is the best comic book movie produced by Fox Studios?
The best comic book movie produced by Fox Studios, and I'll get to Logan here in a minute. It's a very, very specific reason, but it's Deadpool. Deadpool shows something that we've never really seen in the comic book world before. We've seen R-rated comic book movies, but we've never seen a fourth wall breaking, self-aware anti-hero like Deadpool. We've never seen the humor that he brought to it. We never saw comic book movies treated in this way. And all in all, it's just a good movie. It's a great origin movie. It's funny. It's violent. It's crass. It's everything that Deadpool is supposed to be. You can criticize the plot for, hey, it's simple, but guess what? That's not what Deadpool's about. Deadpool's not about this great intricate plot with great character arcs. Deadpool's about self-referential humor, making jokes, being obscene, and that's where the movie succeeds, and that's what a Deadpool movie should have done. Deadpool by far is the best comic book movie produced by Fox.
All right, and Evan, go ahead with your opening arguments.
Okay, the best comic book movie that Fox has produced to this day is Days of Future Past, X-Men Days of Future Past. This movie does so many things, and it does so many things right, and it all combines to this film that none of us expected that we were going to get. It's this time-traveling, back-and-forth film where it's very easy for the audience to get lost, but Brian Turner does a great job directing this film in order to keep us on track and in order to make sure that we are in line to be able to tell the story. I think, and this is probably the movie that has the most stakes involved in any of the X-Men film. Time could be completely reversed if something is done wrong. It's also a good period piece from time to time, especially when they're going back and forth in time. It's well focused. It has a very specific narrative that she's trying to tell, and it's the second best Wolverine movie that we have yet to date. And that's impressive with the fact that there's been 3 solo Wolverine movies out. It's also Jennifer Lawrence showed up and actually performed Mystique incredibly well. And that's something that we don't see. And when she does it, she's one of the best on-screen actresses during that movie and or in comic book history, because she portrays that character so well when she shows up. And it's the most complex comic book movie that we've seen to date due to the time traveling instincts, and then also the back and forth with Professor X and Magneto, both in the future and in the past. It's just so good with what they do. And at the end of the day, it's a solid movie, but it's one that is carried with performances with Michael Fassbender, James McAvoy, Patrick Stewart, Ian McKellen. The list can go on. It's a fantastic film, and it's one that was risky, but it really paid off.
All right, and with that, we're going to go ahead and head into the main round. 6 minutes on the clock once one of you begins speaking.
First of all, I love how we're giving credit to Jennifer Lawrence for showing up now. It's like, oh, now Jennifer Lawrence is actually being there, and so good for her. This is going to be a good movie. No, that's not how it works.
It's one of the better performances in Fox film.
I can name Hugh Jackman, I can name Patrick Stewart, I can name Ian McKellen, I can go on. No, you can't go on. Nobody has the actors in that movie is not that good. It's bogged down in too much time travel.
Wait, too much time travel? Too much time travel in a movie called Days of Future Past? That's what
Professor X, much better in my movie. I could swear, I thought you were going to say X2 based on what Aaron said about, but this being the 3 best movies. Oh my God, you're out. Let's get to Isaac. Isaac. Yeah, Deadpool is funny. It was a great turn of the left turn also with the movie. The problem is, as you said, it's a very weak plot. It's also a very
said yourself, Isaac.
I said you can criticize the plot. I didn't admit that the plot was weak. I said you can say that. I think you're wrong.
If you can say that, then you're giving up that point.
Just because the plot is familiar doesn't make it a bad plot. Just because we've seen people's wives or girlfriends get kidnapped before doesn't mean that when we see it again, it makes it bad. What matters is how it works in that movie, and in this movie, it works.
It's not familiar. It's not that it's familiar. It's that it's pedantic. It's that it has no nuance. It's just Deadpool said
has no nuance. You don't say.
Deadpool, in the honest trailer, all he has to do is go talk to her, and the movie's saved. It's a guy who won't get off won't stop being a pussy and talk to his girlfriend. And the movie is
an asshole. You don't say.
Yeah, I don't know why you're agreeing with my points against you, but thank you.
That's Deadpool! That's literally Deadpool!
Something I want to hit off really fast.
Days of Future Past is as confusing as the title. Days of Future Past doesn't make sense. tries to fix the timeline and ends up screwing it up even more.
It made no apologies to the X-Men timeline, and it's like this for every single X-Men movie, and even Deadpool, and even Logan. The timeline makes no sense, and criticizing the timeline in this movie just nullifies any type of your argument, because the timeline in Deadpool is messed up, and the timeline in Logan is messed up as well. To criticize that is ridiculous. And I want to point off this really quick.
The timeline in Logan isn't messed up. I don't know why I'm defending it, but it's not messed up.
Yeah, it is.
That just annoyed me that you said that. That's objectively wrong.
Also, I want to move forward really fast here. You guys are saying that your films were risky in the comic.
Do you want to move forward or do you want to move backward? I'm not sure which.
The same
backward. Which one? Which one do you want to do?
Kick-Ass did the same exact thing that Deadpool did, but before Deadpool. And also, you say Logan was risky in storytelling. No, it wasn't. We have seen this story told many times. There's a beatdown hero, and he has his final run. We have seen that story, one in comic book movies and two in cinema, so many times before. It's not something new.
I thought it was a risk and change in the
but just because there's a hard R doesn't mean there's a risk. Come on.
It's risky because you have Logan, who's not your typical hero in this movie. He is the worst type of person to look up to.
Mr. Incredible wasn't your typical hero in Incredibles either. Doesn't matter? No.
X-Men Into the Future Past, as much different than Wolverine all the way back in X2, which is what I thought Evan was picking. Oh my God!
Iron Man wasn't your typical hero in the
Also, can we talk about Logan? Hold on. You said you brought up introducing the clone Wolverine as himself as a strength. How is that a strength? When that happened in the theater, that actually took me out of the movie because the CGI doesn't work, and it's a stupid plot point. You don't need him in there. The kid's superpower is going to find it all. Too dark.
First of all, it's not CGI. Second of all, it actually is Hugh Jackman. They had to stop the movie to get him in. And second of all, the fact that it's a Logan having to deal with himself as a younger man after what he's been through. It's him having to go along with after having to protect Laura, who's also a clone of his. He has to fight this other clone of his who he has to deal with, and it's not good. Deadpool again.
Gosh, we have some type of imagery in a movie. We've seen this story before so many times, and you said you called it original. It's clearly not. Which is fine, but it's not. You can't say
it's original in terms of the superhero genre. Name another superhero genre. Name another superhero like this. Name another superhero like this.
Very weak second and third acts where the pace completely slows down, and you're just sitting there like, what the heck?
You don't have a third act in your movie. You have no villain. Your villain is robots and a short guy that is villainous.
Michael Fassbender sitting there trudging with his own mind. What should I do? Should I do the right thing here or the wrong thing here? I'm talking about the Magneto in the past.
I mean, he's deciding whether
he's looking freaking art.
He always Michael Fassbender, is always angered.
The set piece where Michael Fassbender is lifting up RFK Stadium in Washington D.C., lifting it up. That is easily one of the coolest set pieces out of any of the three movies, and is awesome to watch.
I said in my original that I wanted to talk about Logan for one specific reason, and I can talk about Days of the Future Past too. The question is best comic book movie produced by Fox Video Studios. Something comic book movies have to do is be comic booky and be a good movie, right? You have to be both. Logan is not a good comic book movie. It's a good movie. It's a good Western, but as a comic book movie, it fails the arc that it was in the comics. Just because you kill Logan at the end doesn't mean that you followed the Old Man Logan arc. Days of Future Past does complete disservice. My movie does the best service to the
It doesn't do a complete disservice. Comic books are confusing and weird. And Days of Future Past is able to tell a confusing story.
Own the movie. That's the whole point. Deadpool doesn't know anything. And Deadpool is not a shoddy direction, which is why Tim Miller wasn't in Deadpool 2. It's not the best type of action. It's a very you had to because of the budget really drags it down as you get stuck on one action piece for an hour of the movie. You have to keep going back and forth to create flashbacks to even make that movie any semblance of a reality. If you just have the movie straight through, it's horrible. You take it away, it's just one note jokes that don't have any direction or action.
All right, and that is time.
It's a horrible time.
All right, and Greg, you started this round out, so you're going to go ahead and close first.
Okay, I cannot believe X-Men Days of Future Past was Evan's choice. Oh my God, the timeline in that movie. It's going to take 5 more X-Men's, which we're not going to get to even fix any of what happened in X-Men Days of Future Past. It wastes basically 2/3 of the heroes in that movie, which we finally get a Bishop, and he sucks. There's just heroes that get killed off, and Storm comes back for what reason? Why? I have no idea. You have the hypothetical blending of the two cast, but they don't actually interact besides Logan. There is no interaction. Most of the people are just sitting there waiting to die by the Sentinels, while the whole current thing is being ruined by the lack of a good villain, the use of Sentinels that they couldn't really get into and didn't really want to, and the fact that it's in the past, which it does not work for what the past is. Moving on to Deadpool. Deadpool is a one-note story that is relying completely on the reference of its main character to save the movie, and it does not do that. He is a PG-13 high school kid that was gunned into R by a couple of curse words. The action is not as good as it could have been, is brought down by the budget. Tim Miller was a serviceable director that they got because he was already there, but as we've shown, he is not the person to take it over, which is why they got a new director. It is very weak on characterization outside of Deadpool. All he had to do, he said it many times, was just talk to Miranda Bucharan's character, and he doesn't do it. It's just him whining. The villain is particularly one note, as Ajax is just a horrible villain, just there to have that fight at the end and not do anything else. And it's sad and horrible. But moving on to the actual only good movie in this triumvirate is Logan. First of all, you have the best movie by far. I have no idea why Isaac was trying to take it down for not being a comic book movie, because it is. It involves a superhero. It involves many superheroes. It involves actually comic books in the movie that they show. And Logan is by far, whether it's more of a Western, whether it's more of an old man Logan adjacent story, whether it's more of just a Last of Us recreation. The fact is, the movie excels at everything it tries to duplicate. It makes every one of those instincts better. It breaks it down into practicality, which is exemplified by the fact when he takes that limo and tries to go through the fence actually stopped him, which is what would normally happen. Nobody sees that in the movie. Every time they break down the fence, you have a great character arc for Logan, and who was pretty much in the beginning of the movie just a caretaker for Dr. X. But by the end, he is making sure that a new age of mutants can move on with getting the kids to North Dakota and forward. Daphne Keene is one of the brightest talents we can see. I hope we get to see her in the soon. And Logan excels where it does, because it takes a character that we've known for so long and it brings him something new and different, and it creates a movie that everyone was talking about. Everyone wanted Oscars. Everyone wanted something good, because everyone knew that his previous movies have sucked and we didn't think we would get a good one. But for his last movie, he went out with a bang and created the best Fox Studios comic book movie of all time with Logan.
All right, we're going to go ahead and move on to Isaac next for his closing.
Okay. First up, like I said, Days of Future Past. That movie's more confusing than the title is. You said Lawrence shows up for Mystique. She doesn't. She phones it in just like she has ever since the first one, which Greg said. The villain is awful. Everything surrounding the villain and the villain's plot and the whole plot as a whole is confusing or terrible. The only thing that's cool is, hey, young Magneto and young Professor X again. Like that's why they made Days of Future Past, because they wanted to make that again. Like they wanted to have those characters again. They wanted to find a way to bring them together. And once again, it screws up the timeline completely. As for Logan, the comics, you said like, oh, this is a comic movie. There's comics in the movie. The comics in the movie, that's a terrible part of the movie. It makes no sense that there are X-Men comics. That's just lazy writing. It's just something cool to be like, hey, there's an X-Men comic book. How cool is that? And as for the realism, yeah, so they didn't go through the fence. That doesn't make it a great comic book movie. It doesn't. The darkness and the R-ratedness of it, it's too dark. It becomes too dark and too obscene towards, especially Professor X. I didn't need to hear Professor X say the F word a bunch of times. Like I just didn't need that. There's a lot of unnecessary things. The random boob flash in the limousine, completely unnecessary. A lot of overuse of the F word. It's like they had the R rating, so they were like, let's just say it all the time. That scene where Logan's rushing back talking on the phone, he says it like 30 times. It's ridiculous. As for Daphne, like, here's the thing that is fascinating to me. Daphne's cool and everything, but she's cool because she's ferocious. The best scenes with Daphne is when she's fighting and everything. A lot of the other times when she's yelling and fighting and flipping, that's Daphne at her best. A lot of the other times she's overacting or she's just being outclassed by better actors. The introducing the Clone Wolverine thing, you say, oh, it's about fighting himself. Yeah, we haven't seen that in a movie before, have we? We have, and we have seen it done better. It's done bad here. You said there's no CGI use. Yeah, there is de-aging done on Jackman in that scene, and it doesn't work. There's a little bit of uncanny valley there. Once again, okay, and then my movie, right? You said that the only thing that makes Deadpool is because they could say the F word. No, you didn't watch Deadpool then. You didn't watch Deadpool. It's got one of the funniest sex montages in film history. There's a lot more to that movie. He talked about Tim Miller. Hey, if he was a good director, he'd have been brought back for the sequel. Yeah, he was supposed to make the sequel, and then they departed because of creative differences. He was going to make the second one. It wasn't about how he was a bad director for the first one, and people criticized that, so they kicked him out. It wasn't about that. Once again, comic book movie. What's a good comic book movie? Deadpool perfectly represents what his comic book is, and as a movie, it's good. In the main fight, there wasn't a lot of knocks against Deadpool because of that. Because there's not a lot of knocks to say. You can criticize the plot. Like I said, plot's not important to Deadpool. The knocks that you have against him, hey, he's an asshole, he's an idiot, he's this, he's that. Yes, that's Deadpool. Like, you don't get Deadpool if you think that's a fault of this movie. The direction is fine, the action's fine. The whole action scene that you criticized on the bridge is spectacular. That opening scene where they're going on the highway in the fight and he's counting down the bullets, that's awesome. And it's well directed because you never lose focus of where people are, what they're doing. The criticism of directing is just throwing out words that don't mean anything. My movie is concise. It tells a simple story, but a good one. It fits the world. It gives Deadpool a little bit of character development, not that we need much, but it sets out what it sets out to do. Tell a Deadpool story where there's humor, and there's self-referential, and there's breaking the fourth wall. The scene where a flashback in a flash, or fourth wall break in a fourth wall break? Whoa, like, that's what Deadpool is, and it succeeds. You don't have to have this self-serious movie that delves into the duality of man and the consequences of your actions. It's about the movie. My movie succeeds. Your movies don't as well as mine did. Mine is the best Fox-produced comic book movie.
All right, and Evan, go ahead.
I'm gonna hit on Isaac's movie first, Deadpool. You keep saying, it didn't need a complex plot. It didn't need X, Y, and Z. It was just a simple plot, but at the end of the day, we're talking about best comic book movie. We have to look at what's the best movie out of the three. The issue that Deadpool has, it's a serviceable movie. All the comic book stuff, sure, it gets it spot on. But at the end of the day, it's not as great as a movie as Days of Future Past is. It doesn't hit on the layers that it needs to in order for you to actually dive deep into buy into the character of Deadpool and who he is. Sure, to comic book fans, he might be awesome, but you also have to think about the general audience too. What is the general audience going to think of a character like this? And when you don't have the emotional backing of Deadpool that you do of these other characters in Days of Future Past, it doesn't work as well. Earlier in the fight, you said that this is a revolutionary movie, or it's a comedy and it's a fourth wall break. There's a movie that came out that's just like Deadpool years past called Kick-Ass. It's not revolutionary. Kick-Ass did it first. Oh, we heard a laugh. And it was also simple. It was very simple. It should have been something more. There should have been more character depth going on. There should have been more going on in the story where there were more consequences at the end of the day. What was going to happen? Oh, his girlfriend was going to die. That's it. One person. One human being. There should have been more consequences involved. You said it yourself. The movie was good. It wasn't great to you. It was just good. That's what you said yourself. I quote that very specifically. At the end of the day, Deadpool is a movie that people can go out for laughs, but it's nothing more than that. Deadpool needs to be something more, and it clearly wasn't. And now Logan. You taught something that wasn't hit on at all was the action in Logan. The action in Logan is bare minimum okay at best. It should have been way better. You had the absolute chance to have both Daphne Keane and Logan going crazy at some people, but what happens in the scene in the woods is the cam is shaking way too much and it's going all over the place where you can't actually track your eyes and see what's going on. and that's rough, especially when you have Hugh Jackman, as buff as he is, and Daphne Keane, the talent that she is, going absolute bonkers. And you also hit on Daphne Keane and how she was one of the best talents to come out of that year. Did you not see Brooklyn Prince in the Florida Project? She would outact circles of Daphne Keane. So let's not hit on the facts that Daphne Keane was the best child actress to come out of that year. Not by any means. Brooklyn Prince of the Florida Project. Okay, I'll continue. The problem with Logan is that the second and third acts get really muddled. It slows down its pace. It takes you out of the movie, especially when you pop up with that clone, and it becomes less enjoyable to watch. And it takes away from the deep emotional moments that you have between Wolverine and Professor X. And Logan, at the end of the day, it had its shot, but the big issue is it, like Isaac said, it really tries to ride the hard R line, but you're taken out of the movie way too much due to it trying to say, hey, this is a hard R movie, and also, hey, here's a deep emotional moment. Eat it up when it should have been a bit more natural. And we've seen this story so many times: a beat-down hero trying to become something more. Now to hit on the Days of Future Past, you guys go, Isaac, and I quote, the title is more the movie is more confusing than the title. That's one of the most dumb things I've ever heard. That it's something like that is like saying something like that is saying that movie is dumb. You've got to come up with something more than that. The movie is complex on purpose. There are so many stakes going on. You can say, yeah, the Sentinels didn't look real or anything, blah blah blah. But what Kitty Pryde is doing with Logan and that whole relationship that was built right then and there, and then to see Michael Fassbender and James McAvoy act back and forth with each other was marvelous. And not to mention, out of the 3 movies, this easily has the best action set piece. Like I said before, you have the bullet scene when they're about to shoot the mutants, and just completely and it totally encapsulates the idea of how you're supposed to use slow-mo. And then when Magneto's lifting up RFK Stadium, how epic that is and how comic book movie like that is, like Isaac said. And he's trying to say that this movie isn't like a comic book. But you know what this movie did? It took the very confusing comic book storyline and it made it linear and it made it understandable for the mass audiences. Like, oh no, Jennifer Lawrence phoned it in. No, she acted right against Hugh Jackman. And she gave Hugh Jackman a run for her money, which was very impressive. And we also had the likes of Peter Dinklage giving out a great performance in a comic book role. Like I said before, Ian McClellan, sorry, my brain is going haywire right now. Hugh Jackman, James McAvoy, Michael Fassbender. They can just go on, and the character development with all these different characters and the stakes. This is probably the one movie that has the most stakes on the line, because not only is there you have the mutant world online here. One timeline is having the future timeline is on a stranglehold for what the past timeline has to do. And that's what this movie balances really well. It's able to balance the timeline between what's happening in the past and how it can affect the future. Hence the title, X-Men Days of Future Past.
Okay. After that, real fact checks to run through. Always pull this up when we ask best or worst of. Obviously, take this with a grain of salt. Because Rotten Tomatoes is not the end-all be-all, but looking at Rotten Tomatoes scores, X-Men Days of Future Past hold a 90%, Logan holds a 93%, Deadpool holds an 83%, and Deadpool 2, the movie that this question was based on, currently holds an 86%. This one I pulled up just because I don't know if it came through wrong or you missaid it, but the director of Days of Future Past was Bryan Singer.
Yes, I said that.
Okay, it came through a little fuzzy, that's why I just wanted to look it up and correct it real quick. Greg, you made the comment that Tim Miller was taken off of Deadpool 2 because of his bad directing. The official, well, quote unquote, official reason as to why he left that came out in reports was multiple conflictions between Ryan Reynolds over the creative control of the film. Reynolds was given expanded creative control over the film. Miller wanted to do a stylized type of filmmaking, whereas Reynolds wanted to just continue on what the first film set up. And Tim Miller wanted to cast actor Kyle Chandler as Cable, which Reynolds was opposed to. And the story goes that Fox chose to back Reynolds over Tim Miller, which is why he left the film. However, officially, both Tim Miller and Ryan Reynolds have denied all of these reports and seem to be on good terms with each other. So there is no official story as to why Tim Miller left. We just know he was on board, he did pre-production, and then did leave the movie over creative differences. And then also it was brought up in the match, but just to fact check it real fast, there was CGI used on Hugh Jackman in Logan. The de-aging is a CGI effect that they use on characters. So just to fact check that one real fast. Okay, this one was... This one was really, really close because the thing is, and this is easily the best fight of the three so far because all of you did a good job of defending your films, and then all of you did a great job of hitting the other one's films. First thing I want to say is everybody was completely on point in this round. Everybody was fighting at their absolute top game, and this is the type of stuff that we expect in a championship match. In terms of Days of Future Past, Evan's defenses for the film included the fact that the film executes the time travel concept well. The set pieces in the 70s are a good period piece part of the film. It brings a lot of good performances in its lead characters, and it has some of the better action set pieces out of these films. Greg's bashbacks against the film included the fact that most of the supporting cast is only okay. The time travel can bog down the film a little bit. The fact that the blending of the two casts isn't a proper blending, it's just two kind of separate movies, and that the older cast is underused and they're sitting around a lot of the film. Isaac's only real bash against it was the fact that there's no straight head-on villain in the film. When talking about Logan, Greg's defenses for it were the fact that going into it, you had a little bit of a lowered expectation based on the preceding Wolverine films. It is, in his opinion, the most unique of the X-Men films, and we see a bit of a darker side of Logan. We see a Logan and other characters that are dealing with more interpersonal demons that we didn't see in the other films. In terms of bashbacks, Evan brought up the fact that the story isn't completely original. It has been done before, just maybe not possibly in comic book movies and even a little bit in comic book movies. The pacing slows down towards the end and it affects the film, and the action is average at best, despite the fact that they were given the R rating to help increase that action. And Isaac's points against it include the fact that X-24 is the character's name. The Wolverine clone was a bit of an iffy introduction in the film. The X-Men... literal X-Men comics is just a lazy plot point in the film. The movie tonally may hit a too dark a point, taking it out of step with some of the other X-Men films, and that Daphne Keane, while giving a good performance in the action set pieces, may not have given the best performance outside of it, and Evan definitely supported that point by bringing up other examples. Meanwhile, for Deadpool, Isaac talked about the fact that, and just to be fair, Isaac acknowledged at the start that a lot of the plot issues and character issues within his film are used as jokes in the film, and it is something that you expect going in. So I didn't count necessarily all of those arguments against it, and a part of the argument was spent on that. But he talks about the fact that it is 100% different than any type of comic book movie that we've seen before. The fact that it brings a different type of humor than we've seen in comic book movies. Out of the three, it is the most comic accurate to the tone that it's based on. And the fact that Tim Miller does direct the action well within the film. In points against it, Greg had the fact that the plot is generally easy to criticize. But again, that's the only general point I'll give on that, because any category of that is something that Isaac defended. The lack of big budget causes the action to be a little underdone, and Ajax is a one-note villain. Evan's points against it include the fact that Kick-Ass did the same type of style movie first, and that while Deadpool executes its comic fourth wall breaking concept well, it isn't necessarily the best made film of the bunch. So as you guys can see, there was a lot in that argument. There was a lot going back and forth. And sometimes when it comes to situations like this, it comes down to literally how many points did you get in the fight. So when we're talking about defenses and hits, Evan in total got 10, Greg got 10, and Isaac got 9 to himself. So that ever so slightly will knock Isaac out as the first one. So then when we're looking at Greg taking on Evan, even though I think Evan did a better job of defending Logan than Greg did as an overall in the battle, Greg bashed in on X-Men Days of Future Past more than Evan was able to do so with Logan, and for that, I'm going to give Greg the point on this round. All right, and with that, we are going to go ahead and move on to question number 4, which is, with title matches, and we have a lot of questions. I have to start getting creative. I have to start coming up with some weirder questions. And so 10 years ago, a filmmaker by the name of Clive Barker had a film release. I even forget what the name of that movie is, but it was released in theaters 10 years ago, and he's got a weird, awkward filmography, so I thought, best movie either directed, produced, or written by Clive Barker. And with that, since he's walked out of the room, I'm just going to go ahead and give it here. Evan has chosen to skip this question. He will not be fighting the 4th round. So this one will go directly between Isaac and Greg. And with that, Greg, you drafted the question first. So go ahead with your opening arguments.
Yeah. So my movie is by far the best Clive Barker movie written and directed by him, even based on a novella of his called The Hellbound Heart. It is, of course, the 1987 horror classic Hellraiser. It is one of the scariest, one of the creepiest villains of all time, and Pinhead creates something so iconic with just the costume of his is incredible, all done practically. From a thematic perspective, it is the most interesting of Barker movies. It's interesting. It's really a great option of how to pleasure and temptation of pain, and how people have to deal with that fact of what Hellraiser brings with the Cenobites as his villains as well. One of the possibly the best horror monsters in recent memory. You have Kirsty as one of the best protagonists of all time, really sympathetic. Best protagonist of all time in a horror movie, let me say. Really sympathetic. And Frank, Julie, and Larry are brilliant in a forward-looking towards revolutionary work, which is why there have been, I think, 4 or 5 sequels to this movie, because it is that good. It is the essential Clive Barker movie.
All right, and with that, we're going to go ahead and move into Isaac. What is the best Clive Barker film?
The best Clive Barker film is, this is the second time I've fought this movie in consecutive matches. I fought it in the last match I was in, and I'm fighting in this one. Gods and Monsters. Gods and Monsters is the best Clive Barker movie. He produced it, but it still counted. And that's why I chose it, because we're not talking about what represents what you think of when you think of Clive Barker. It's just, what's the best movie? That's basically what it is. What's the best movie that has his name attached to it? And Gods and Monsters, while Hellraiser is great, it's a great genre piece. There's some problems with it, but Gods and Monsters as a movie is fantastic. It tells the true story of an old Hollywood director named James Whale. He directed The Bride of Frankenstein and a whole bunch of other movies. And it tells this story of him as an older man. He's homosexual, and he has this gardener, Brendan Fraser, and it tells kind of his life story through flashbacks to World War I, I think it was. And it's this really incredible character study. It reflects attitudes and themes that are still resonant. It's an incredible character piece. The acting is top notch. You care about these characters. It was nominated for 3 Academy Awards, one for Best Adapted Screenplay. Highest rated of his movies on Rotten Tomatoes, and there's a reason for it. It's because of how good it is. The story is compelling. The acting is top notch, and just as a movie as a whole, it just works on every single level.
All right, and with it's on the clock when you guys begin speaking.
Wow, you want to talk about a movie that you're going with just based on the name, just being the name on it? It might have been accepted, but goddamn, I don't know what he could have possibly had to do with that movie. He's just an executive producer, not even an actual producer. While the movie itself is a good movie, it's definitely a nice biopic of the character. It is obviously more of a Bill Condon movie and Ian McKellen, but Brendan Fraser is horribly miscast. He does not step up to what Ian McKellen is bringing. It is a sad one-note role that he does. But we're talking about the best Clive Barker movie. I don't care if his name is on it. The best Clive Barker movie is going to be a horror movie. It's going to be Hellraiser, because it creates the best character by far. It creates a character who transcends not our world. It's a alien from another space. It creates this whole duality of religion and atheism, and it creates this great villain that you are just completely terrified by with what he brings to the screen, especially when you see him in the wearing the skin of Frank, and you first see him in that. It is completely terrifying. I can't even imagine why your movie was picked, was accepted, but goddamn, that's what it is.
It was accepted, and
I'm not saying it's not.
It's talking about name recognition and stuff. Like, yeah, you went for the easy choice with Hellraiser because that's what you think of. But what's fascinating about Hellraiser, and this I think people forget, everybody remembers Pinhead. You're right. He's an incredible villain. He's a great villain. He's scary, all that stuff. But that's all I remember from Hellraiser. The story, convoluted mechanobites, and the basically the MacGuffin of the whole thing. But it's a forgettable movie outside of Pinhead. That's what it is. It's a fun, scary movie that you put on at midnight and you watch to scare yourself silly, and it works on that level. As a larger piece of art, it doesn't work as well as Gods and Monsters. This is a true story, this real life struggle, and like you said, Brendan Fraser miscast. No, this is literally the perfect casting for Brendan. This is where Brendan Fraser works. Is this like dumb, attractive, manly man that just like stumbles into this situation that he's completely unprepared for, and he does still bring acting. Sure, he doesn't bring it to the level of Ian McKellen, but who does? But he does bring a performance. That final scene where Ian McKellen asks him to kill him. There is so much emotion in that room. It's an incredible scene to watch just on its own. Brendan Fraser, he's not the best actor in the world, but he works here, and part of it is because of his character. He basically has to play himself with a twist. He's big, he's handsome, and he's manly, and that's what Brendan Fraser is, and he does it well. And he brings emotion to it towards the end.
The fact is, nobody cares about your movie. Nobody even saw the movie. It has a budget of, has a box office of crap. Again, Brendan Fraser is not, does not even get close to the accolades of Ian McKellen. I don't care what you're talking about. And the thing you're saying about the MacGuffin thing, about the actual box, yeah, that's what brings the horror movie in. But once you get past once you get the box, and once that brings up what's needed within the characters of Hellraiser and the Cenobites, you get the great performances of Ashley Lawrence as Kirsty Cotton, who is this great sympathetic character who doesn't want to die and is just trying to save her own skin and having to deal with the duality of those issues. You have Andrew Robinson's performance as Larry, as the main character arc as you're getting, is going to be a great development throughout the entire movie. Again, Gods and Monsters, I'm honestly shocked that this is the movie that was chosen. Not even a producer, an executive producer. But again, I just keep bringing it up because that's how stupid it is. It is just not
because you can't knock its quality because it's good. All you can say is
quality. It's not a good movie. The quality it's something forgettable. The fact is nobody got to it. Brendan Fraser was a horrible choice for the second lead. Ian McKellen is basically trying to carry that movie on his own. And while the Academy might have tried to recognize it, it was a weak year for Academies. And you bring in. It was a very weak year. You had Lolita Davidovich is also not bringing up as the also love interest as the side piece for that. And Lynn Redgrave is just kind of there. She's wasted as the character to Frank James Whale. Sorry, and Ian McKellen is really the only character in that movie with any kind.
Okay, that is going to be time, but it is going to go back to Greg for closing arguments.
Gods and Monsters is a fine biopic of a character of a former director who, near the end of his life, is realizing the end of it, and it gets into this homosexuality thing, which Brendan Fraser does not play right. He's basically not doing what he's supposed to. Ian McKellen is basically trying to act his way out of that movie to save it, and he does an admirable job because Ian McKellen always does an admirable job, except in Days of Future Past. But the movie as a whole does not work. It's centralized on one particular centralized on one actor. The story doesn't really go anywhere. It doesn't have a doesn't have the emotional conclusion that you want out of the movie, and it just kind of ends and doesn't really give us what we need and what we want from that movie. Whereas Hellraiser is the best Clive Barker movie, not only something directed, written, and produced by, but also based on a story of his that he has transcended to become one of the best horror movies and horror franchises of all time, with one of the best villains of all time, with Pinhead and the costume design for him, the Cenobites creating that one of the best horror monsters, if not the main monsters for the horror genre. You have the different actors that are bringing their characters to the forefront in Ashley Lawrence, making Kirsty such a great sympathetic heroine, and Andrew Robinson as Larry, with Sean Chapman as Frank, just creating a beautiful triumvirate that they do, where it's trying to the whole movie, Kirsty makes this mistake and is trying to get out of it while sacrificing others, and it creates this great option of duality of religion versus atheism. And what Pinhead is really there for, is he just a demented angel that brings it to Earth? Clive Barker creates the gore that you want with his, especially with Frank's first time skin on Larry. Hellraiser is what you want from a Clive Barker movie, and that's what you get.
All right, and we'll go to Isaac.
All right, just to reiterate, question's not most successful, not most seen. I don't know why you said I brought up my box office. Your movie didn't make a lot more than mine. But once again, not about most successful, not about the most seen. It's about the best. As a whole, compared 1-to-1, my movie's better. It's better reviewed. Was nominated more. Doesn't matter how many people saw it. You brought up some points that are just stupid. Lynn Redgrave was wasted. She was nominated for a performance. She's incredible in that movie. There's a scene in the kitchen between her and Brendan Fraser where she's trying to figure out whether he's actually gay or not. It's fantastic. And you keep saying Brendan Fraser's wasted. He's not. He's not supposed to play this gay guy with nuance. He's supposed to play this straight macho man who's bigoted and doesn't want to think about it, and it's like one note, and he plays that until the end, where the emotional climax, where you said the movie falls apart and doesn't have an ending, where the climax is where he tries, where Ian McKellen tries to get him to kill him. That is where he has the bolt of lightning hit him between the eyes. It's a great movie. It absolutely resonates today. Your movie is a fun nostalgia piece. It's a fun thing to put on TV. It doesn't hold up as well. The special effects, the acting, certainly not as good as my movie. Like I said, my movie's more important, better acted, better reviewed, better directed. Everything about my movie works. Your movie works for what it is trying to be, but it's not trying to be that much. And even there, some of the effects fall flat. Just cut and dry. You just look at these two movies side by side, and you know one might be more palatable for wide audiences, but you know which one's better, and it's mine.
Okay, and with that, before we get to the judgment call, just a couple quick fact checks to run down. As always, when we do best or worst questions, Rotten Tomatoes is an aggregator review site. Take its reviews with a grain of salt, but Hellraiser currently holds a 68% on Rotten Tomatoes. Gods and Monsters holds a 95%. The Hellraiser sequels and the number of them were talked about. There are actually 9 total movies and 8 sequels to Hellraiser, with the most recent being Hellraiser Judgment, released in 2018. Gods and Monsters, the setting was talked about, so just to fact check that, the actual setting of the film is set post-Korean War. The flashbacks go to World War I. When talking about the Academy recognition, Isaac was correct in that. It was nominated for 3 Academy Awards. It won 1 for Best Adapted Screenplay, written by Bill Condon, and it was nominated for 2 acting categories. Sir Ian McKellen was nominated for Best Actress, and Lynn Redgrave was nominated for Best Supporting Actress. And because it was brought up, I did look up the box office to both films, just so we could get a proper comparison, since Greg did want to make a point of bringing it up. Gods and Monsters grossed a lifetime total of $6,451,628. However, that comes with the caveat of its widest release was 149 theaters, and there is no details from a foreign release. So it was only released in theaters domestically, most likely to apply for Academy Award recognition, and it did not get a full wide release. Hellraiser, though released in 1987, so obviously inflation make these numbers look a bit different today, but it had a lifetime gross of $14,564,027. It opened to, and its widest release was 1,000 theaters. However, there was also no proof of a foreign release for this film either. So to compare the two, yes, Hellraiser did make more, however, and it probably had a smaller budget than Gods and Monsters. However, Gods and Monsters never got a proper full release and never got a foreign release in a time where foreign releases help add to the box office. So there is some debatability on, I mean, you can't debate like straight numbers, but I'm just saying in terms of facts, there is some classifications you have to take into it. I'm going to give the point to Isaac on this one, just simply because Greg's only two negatives against the film that he really brought up were the fact that Fraser was miscast, which Isaac did fight back against, and the fact that he did mention about the fact that in terms of comparing it to other biopics, it comes across as just average in comparison. But other than that, there wasn't really a lot of hits. A lot of the argument was spent on, even if it was meant as a joke, a lot of the argument was spent on the idea of the semantic that the film should not have been accepted. But the question was best movie either directed, produced, or written by Clive Barker. It did not state the extent of his involvement in the film. It just stated he had to be involved, and Clive Barker is a credited executive producer on the film, which means it gets accepted.